Like It Your Earthkeeper here with the Quantum Realm Institute Yoga and Mystery School, and I have a lovely guest today. I'm so excited about this one, Dustin Johnson. Dustin, would you mind we'll just jump right in. That's normally what I do. How did you become a yogi? Like, share with us.
Okay. So it was about 3 years ago. One of my best friends invited me to come watch him play yoga, watch him lead a class. It was his first official class, and so I was like, sure, why not? And I attended it, and I fell in love. I remember my favorite pose was the child's pose, where we went to the side because I got a deep stretch in my back, and I just really enjoyed the practice and kind of how it made me feel. Then they started doing it in the dark, and I was like, oh, this is interesting stuff. And I began to really enjoy the practice of yoga. So I decided to start going weekly, and his teacher was like, well, let's go ahead and throw you in teacher training. And okay. And then she said, well, you'll just go every week when you come in, then you'll register an hour, and it'll be towards your 200 hour. And I was like, okay. I didn't know what I was opening into, but I like teaching, so I was like, if I get a title, like, that makes sense. And then that's actually when I connected with you, and you showed me like actual literature and processes, and I was like, okay, seems like an actual school or coursework. And because I've done a lot of different courseworks, and your education is only as good as the delivery of it. And so if you don't have it laid out in a right way, then you could learn all sorts of things that you can't actually apply, because you need it to be kind of linearly for it to make sense. And so when you showed me the process that you had, I was like, all right, let's go through that. This was also at the beginning of my golden year. I was born November 27th, and my golden year was 27. And just so happened that I even had my horoscope read, and it showed that the planets were aligned in my first house in a very similar fashion to when I was born. So it was a chance of being reborn again. And I actually submitted myself. It's funny, because we were just talking about this. I submitted myself to the divine and said, there's a mission, and I'm here for it. And so at the time, I was already a registered health and wellness coach. I also studied the mind, as I wanted to be the best dad that I could be for my children. I have an 11-year-old girl and a 7-year-old son. And this was 2 years ago, so they were 9 and 5. But I just wanted to be the best man that I could be, so I studied myself and my mind, and then it turned into, how can I study spirituality and my connection to spirituality, because that's a deeper sense of consciousness, because consciousness is what runs the body. So I went through this process of submitting myself to this big mission, and it's been a wild road. I have become a health and wellness mindset coach, self-mastery coach. So I'm a health coach, transformative coach, mastery coach, a yoga instructor, and a Reiki practitioner. I'm also in a guided meditation facilitator coursework. My goal, and then I was connected with some very influential, successful people that have really shown me success in business. And I feel as though I want to take my message and spread it to the world of, personally developing yourself. And the people that I've connected with, they're the ones that have taught me, how important personal development was. I understood how important it was for me, because I was broken. I had a very tough childhood, and that toughness trickled into my parenting style. And I could just see my daughter, 3 years old, and me yelling at her and screaming at her, and not actually being a father, but more of like an authoritative father. And it wasn't working. It was beating her up. And same thing with my wife. And so I wanted to do personal development for myself, so I could develop myself to be the best dad that I could be. But then I realized, other people need that too, and not everyone has the desire to go through a coaching program. The only reason why I found this out was through coaching. In order to take a client somewhere, you first have to go there yourself. And so I had to go through the depths of my own mind before I could take someone else. I had to go through the depths of my own health before I could take someone else. And so spirituality is no different. If you want to take someone through the journey of spirituality, you have to go through it yourself. And I have learned from my childhood that the do as I say, not as I do does not work. You got to lead by example. And so in order to be able to teach anyone anything, I got to first be the example that I did it. So I went down that path every area possible: personal development, self-growth, spirituality, physicality, like working out, yoga, meditation, then business. And now I'm bringing it all together to create my own like coaching program and practice. And I want to, what I believe is that personal development is will be the catalyst to changing the world. If we all choose to develop ourselves, then we create a ripple effect, because now how we impact other people changes. And as we collectively do that, you grow yourself, I grow myself, then we both leave ripple effects in the world. Then eventually we'll see giant waves, and that's what's going to change the future of this entire planet, for my children and your children and the children of the world. They didn't ask to be born. It wasn't their choice. They were just kind of brought here. So it's our duty as parents, as leaders, as adults to set the example. And the only way that we can do that is if we develop ourselves. If we believe I am who I am and this is how I will always stay, then you don't open the door for growth. You tell everyone else they can do the same thing, and we end up spinning our wheels doing nothing. But if we actually take ownership for our own lives, take ownership for what we bring to the table, and grow that, then we can see other people say, oh, well, if they did it, so can I. And it inspires and it leads. And it only takes a small select few. It's interesting because I found this thing called the Bell Theory. And I was told about it it was actually for children with autism. And I actually found that it can be applied to anything. And like this Bell Theory is like, you can look at cannabis, you can look at mullets, you can look at fanny packs. It all happens. It starts where there's a low amount of people that see the value in it, and then they start using it. And then other people are like, oh, that's cool. And then it kind of goes up. And now there's a bunch of people that see so much value in this. Now it's not cool anymore. So then it starts to die down, and it comes down until it comes back to like the originators. Like I said, fanny packs, mullets, they all fall underneath the same category. Well, what if there was, 2%, 3%, 10%, 20% of the population focused on personal development? It's going to become a very widespread thing. I think this would be something that wouldn't fall into the category of non-important. I would hope it wouldn't dip back down, because, the value that I found from personal development, and in my life as well, I had struggles that forced me to change. My wife did not have those same struggles. And so her desire to change was different than mine. And when we were surrounded by successful people and they said, listen, if you wanted to be successful, you need to grow yourself. And that's success in your relationships, that's success in your parenting style, that's success in your relationship with yourself, God, whatever. If you want that to get better, if you want to be successful at it, you got to develop yourself. And so her now, like, she loves it. She swallows it up, and so it just shows that even if the idea that it'll dip is hopefully non-existent, because I would like to just see it continue to go up and everyone develop themselves. And I could definitely see in 50 years, 100 years that we could see a changed society in a positive direction. But it takes a few people of today to make these decisions now, to lead by example, because our children, I could go for deep, our brains develop through a certain age group, and the first 7 years dictates a lot of who we are as an adult. And so if our parents became better when we were born, then we would have less struggles in the rest of our lives. And so my goal is to equip other adults on how to be better adults, so they can set better examples for children. Because, you don't have to just set an example for your kids. You can set an example for my kids when you see them, or someone else's kids when they're walking down the street. Hi, how are you doing? That's something so simple that people have forgotten these days. And so to set that example for kids, it's all of us. It's not that I have to lead my kids, but it's everyone that impacts them has to help.
Yeah, impacting the future generations, for sure.
It's a must, and it's a duty. As adults, it's our duty. Kids didn't ask to be born. It's no one. I didn't ask to be born, but I'm here, so might as well make the best of it. I mean, what else am I gonna do? I'm gonna sit at home and watch someone else do something with their life, or am I gonna set the example and do something with my life, and then teach my kids to do the same thing? Adversity is gonna happen. Everyone wants to play video games because they don't feel the adversity outside of, oh, I lost. But they don't feel running up the mountain. They don't feel slaying the dragon. They don't feel the cuts that happens from all that. So it's easy. You get an easy accomplishment without actually putting any effort in. Go put effort in your life. Go lose a little bit. Grow some grit. Stop being a pansy. You know, we all need to feel pain. Without pain, you don't grow. You know, I've been in some pretty horrendous situations in the RV world, and because of all those struggles, like I can handle a little baby cut on my hand and I'm fine. You know, I fell off a 12-foot ladder last Friday and I walked away fine because you know, I know it sounds horrible, but I've put my body through some pretty tough situations. You know, I've worked with 7 stitches in my foot because I had to. You know, there's no choice. So when you show yourself how resilient you actually are, you're going to end up pushing yourself in ways you never thought you could. But if you don't ever try, you're never going to know.
Well, I mean, what do you think keeps people on the couch?
Comfort. We were designed to survive. And so in today's world, it's so easy to survive. You got food, you got shelter, you're good. Like that's pretty much the basic necessities. And outside of that, it takes someone that wants more and actually is willing to do something about it to get there. But in my opinion, I think that society has been pushed into a place of fear, has been pushed into a place of resources are from something outside of yourself, whether that's the government, whether that's God. You know, it's something else that is your reason to survive instead of sovereignty. It's like, no, you create your own life. Like I saw a video this weekend and said, when people talk about heaven, it's always this different response. Like I could ask you what heaven means and it's going to be something different than what it means to me, because heaven is what we choose to create it as. Well, that's the same thing with earth. You know, where we are, right? Yeah, and that's what he says. Like heaven isn't a place over here; it's a place right here. We get to create it. And you can create heaven on earth if you choose to create. But people find it easier to watch someone else create. Watch TV because someone else created that. Watch a movie because someone else created that. It's easier. I fell victim to it. I hated reading. It was only because your school that I began reading again since high school. Well, actually, since jail, because in jail, you know, that's the best thing you can do is read. But I wasn't reading anything beneficial. It was like James Patterson books or something like that, because they were short chapters. I could keep my attention for a short period, on to the next. I fell victim to the ADHD idea that, you know, my brain is messed up and that's just how it'll always be. No, my brain is different and I need to learn how to use it and utilize it and leverage it and develop it. And when we're taught to fall victim to our feelings and our emotions and things don't feel good, we'll fall victim to sitting down and not doing anything because that feels good. It feels better than failing. I'll tell you that much. I'd rather sit down on the couch all day than fail, but I don't grow.
Yeah, right.
It's like at the gym. That's a great example. The best way to grow your muscles is to go until you fail. Like that's what all the professional lifters will tell you. Go until you're like shaking and then the bar drops. Like that's when you know you've done enough. That's life. Like that's an example for everything.
I love it. I love talking to you. Always. Dustin is a wealth of knowledge.
Got a lot of it.
And I love that you've learned all of these things and you're always seeking to learn more. Like, I love that. And so you become a beautiful resource then for your clients. And talk a little bit about your programs that you've put together. They're pretty awesome.
So I have, what I was blessed with from the beginning is the total body transformation, which is around body awareness and body change.
You have transformed.
Oh yeah, lost 100 pounds.
I've seen some before pictures.
Yeah, I was
amazing.
thick boy. My wife got pregnant, so did I. That's what I tell everybody. And but yeah, so the total body transformation, that is what I was given, and then I am doing a business builder. So many people want, and this is not just like a professional business or even like a small business, but even someone that's building someone else's business. You can get so caught up in the work that you lose yourself in it. And, you know, I do it too. I work 12 to 18 hour days. So I know you got to have time where you got to feed yourself and take care of yourself and be strategic with what you're doing. Because, you know, you can lose your relationships with your family. You can lose your relationships with your kids. And like, I didn't have 2 children to leave them. Even though I want to build something beautiful for them, I still got to make sure I'm there for them in that process. And so having that type of system where you can teach someone the value of their family and how to have that accountability, because I think that's one of my favorite parts, is to help someone stay accountable. You know, I hired a personal trainer. We all got to have a coach. I got a couple coaches, but when I had a personal trainer, I actually went to the gym because I invested money into this guy It's like, I'm not going to spend money and then not do anything with it. That's just a waste of my money and his time. He's still, well, actually, no, he still got paid, so I guess he doesn't really matter. But on my behalf, like, I got to show up. So having that accountability is nice. But then also the resources, like, he taught me about carbs and all sorts of other things. How to eat your macros, and so you can still eat your pizza and you can enjoy food without limiting yourself. There's those little things that you don't know what you don't know. And I love the mind, because the mind is just so deep. So figuring out, like, what could be slowing you down? What is this one thing that you want, but there's a belief that's stopping you from achieving it? Because if you were to achieve what you want, it goes against this belief that you formulated as an early child, and that falls into business, that falls in. And then another one of my programs is building a balanced couple. I've been married for 6 years. I've been with my wife for 12, and so we've seen a lot. We were together for a month before she was pregnant with my daughter, so we experienced a lot. I was in jail for the first 6 months of our daughter's life, and my wife was just kind of single mom. We learned a lot, and so and to add one more layer to it, our personality types are the exact opposite, so it was very tough. And so we've learned a lot along the way of how to help, or how to be successful in your own relationship, how to speak each other's love language, how to apologize the right way, how to support one another. And there's so many different layers to being in a successful relationship. So providing that. And then I have the half-year renewal, which is a half-year program. The goal is to renew you. You walk away 6 months later as a new person. And this is because of new input, new resources, new structure, new accountability. If the life you're living right now in 6 months isn't going to be the life you want, and you don't know what you can do to change that, well, I bet I could help you find that out. Because it's not about me finding out what you need, it's about me asking you the right questions that allows you to find out what you really need. Because it's not my dream, it's not my goal, it's not my success, it's yours. But it is through strategic questioning that we can find that. And this is what I loved about it myself, was because it gave me a chance to, what is it that I really want? And I really want to provide a good life for my family and my children. I want to make sure that they have something that when I die, my kids are going to look at me like my dad did the best that he could to provide for the world, and not just us, but for the world, because we're all interconnected. We're all children of God, beings of the universe. There's all sorts of different ways that you can phrase it, but we're all one. We're all interconnected. So it's what I do to help you helps me, helps us, and that's the goal. And so through asking these questions and going deep, you get to learn what it is your burning desire is. And that's what lights people's soul. People, they go to work, they get lost. Why am I doing this? What's the point? That's common. It's because no one teaches you how to figure out what it is you want. They ask you at first grade, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? Like, what you want to do for the rest of your life. Even in high school, like, how can you ask an 18-year-old, let alone a 15, 16, 17-year-old, what they want to do for the rest of their life? They don't even know what the real world looks like yet. They have not experienced anything. There's, I tell people all the time, you don't really know who you are until you turn 18 and you move out. Move out, then you'll know who you are. Move away from your friends and your family and start over. Then you'll find out who you are. Because when you're a child and your friends determine how you view yourself, you will change yourself to fit into that group. And that is a survival tactic. Being ostracized or casted out of the tribe was a death sentence back in the day. This is something that's still intrinsically in our minds that we can't necessarily let go of. And so finding that, hey, my wife and I agreed that when our kids turn 18, we're going to give them 6 months worth of income to go somewhere else. Go learn who you truly are without me, without her, without their friends, without anything. Just find out who you are, because that's the best way to do it, in my opinion. And then, so that's the half renewal, and then the 1 year renewal, which is just an extension of the half year. But that, it takes a long time to create change. It's not something that's going to happen in a couple weeks. You can have something that changes you, but it's not going to create a deep change in you, into the sense that it will continue to carry on. That takes consistency and repetition. One of the videos I was watching this weekend was that in the first 7 years, you're in a place of theta, which is where you're in a place of hypnosis. And when you're hypnotized, you're actually able to change things like this on who you are. Well, once you pass 7 years old, you get into the alpha brain waves, which is where you're no longer like in play mode or hypnosis. And so the only way to actually create subconscious change is through repetition. You can't repeat something enough in 1 week to create lasting change in your prefrontal cortex. It just doesn't work like that. It takes a lot long of consistency, and so that's why a 1-year program has so much more value than a 6-month program, because of the consistency aspect. And then we have my entry level programs, which is Discovering Your Inner Child. This is a 1 through 4 week process. It just depends on what level of depth you're trying to go through. But it's amazing how much change can happen in 1 hour. You know, you went through the OTR and it was more like 2 hours, but that because we can talk, but
I think we were in there for 3
yeah.
3 hours.
But when it gets deep, you know, it's something you don't want to. So many people go wide. They just look at all sorts of things that catch their attention. They need to go deep. Like, what is the one thing that it was crazy because this weekend I talked with a guy at the mall, and that's what he's like. He asked me what I wanted, like what I liked, and I told him what I liked, and it was coaching, which is essentially it's because I like seeing change, like sitting across the table from you and watching your life change in an hour, 2 hours is just.
Or the light comes on.
Right.
You get an epiphany.
Yeah.
And you're just like, yes.
Yeah, and now your whole life just changed from this one moment. Like, I love that. But what it really, and he asked me like, no, what is it that you like? And I said, coaching. He's like, you're stubborn, aren't you? And I was like, I am. And it was the context. There's a lot of context that's missing from that conversation. But what I took from it when I walked away was like, that isn't what I love. Like, I like coaching, but what I love is the brain. It's the depths of the brain. It's the adjustments of the brain. It's the fact that from the moment you're born to the moment you die, you can change your brain like it's the same. You know, it's not the same with your muscles. You know, they atrophy, your bones atrophy, like things decay and fall away. Your brain does not do that. You can rebuild your brain from scratch, from brain damage, which is incredible. So it's like the depths of that, learning that, understanding that, and it blows my mind with it. Other people aren't as fascinated about it as I am, but I'm different and I'm unique, and that's okay. But this is the one thing that operates the rest of this. You know, this wouldn't work if it wasn't for this. And I take people through like surveys, and brain health is like the last thing on it. I'm just like, I don't know, but people don't know. You know, you don't know what you don't know, and that's why I feel like I was brought to love this work, is to bring this awareness to others, because as we learn about our brain, we can therefore have more control. Same thing with our bodies. We're learning through science how we can control our bodies through different diets, through different workouts, because everyone's body is different, everyone's brain is different. Finding different approaches to different things creates different results, but it takes someone to want to see that and provide that education. And you don't hear much about that in the brain category. The body is a huge topic these days, but the brain is not. So that's where I come in.
It's probably kept from us for a reason. They don't want us doing our own thinking.
Yeah, and that's yeah. In the Industrial Revolution, they changed the school systems because they couldn't get these free-thinking farmers and entrepreneurs to fall under the corporate system and follow the rules. They wanted to create their own rules because they were free-thinking. So they devised a system that went into the public education system to teach kids from an early age how to follow orders, how to take directions, how to memorize things, which is all of what you do at a job. And so it takes away that free-thinking aspect so that you're just a yes man. Same thing with the military. Think outside the box in the military and you're not going to be happy with yourself. So it's almost like it's been designed this way over the last century to put us in this box. And it's just more and more people are finding this out, though. They're opening their eyes. And that's because of the connection of the internet. You know, I don't think the internet is a bad thing. I think it's great. But it's about how you use it. It's neutral. You know, it's just like algorithms. Everyone thinks algorithms are bad. No, they can be good if you know how to use them. You know, I feel like my algorithm's pretty good, but I'm strategic with what I like, what I share, what I give attention to. Because it's crazy. If you go to those reels and look at basketball enough, you'll just start seeing a bunch of basketball reels. This is my story because I like basketball. And but then the moment I stop paying attention to those and I keep going, now they start changing, and it changes into different things of like, now I'm seeing workout stuff and stuff like that. And so it's just interesting how you can manipulate things, but they can be towards your benefit.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, great programs. I was gonna say Sagittarius. They're the truth seekers, so that makes you really good and you ask all the right questions to provide insight and to get people doing their own thinking so that it comes to them in an organic fashion, you know? It's not like you're there telling them, oh, you should be doing this and you should be doing that, because nobody wants that.
No.
It's like you ask the right questions to get people thinking.
Well, that was tact, and that is something that I learned, because what you described in the beginning is who I used to be.
Yeah?
I used to be like, I would yell information at people, and because that's what I was taught. That's what my dad did. He was very arrogant and egotistical and narcissistic and pessimistic and all sorts of this big ball of negativity, and it created me into who I was. And although I had good intentions, your intentions aren't everything. It's the delivery. It doesn't matter what people hear. It doesn't matter what you say. It matters what people hear. And I was just throwing information at them. And what I would encourage everyone to do is become a scholar of yourself. The reason why I am who I am today, the reason why I can deliver the information the way that I do, is because I learned who I was. You know, another part of my personality is that I'm the kind of person that doesn't care about talking about controversial topics. Like, it doesn't bother me. You can dislike me. Like, it's fine. It's real stuff. It's that guru mindset. I don't have to prove anything to you. I know what I know is true, and if you don't, you can either accept it or not. And that's kind of part of who I am. But until I found that layer, it was harder for me to mitigate that I was doing that. It's like, it's okay that you don't care, but you don't have to like really not care. You know, you should care a little bit, but not care enough that you still say it in the first place, if that makes sense. So being a scholar of yourself, learning about the Sagittarius, the Capricorn, the personality traits, love languages, apology languages, all these different versions of who you are just helps you bring that to the world. If you don't know who you are, then how can you bring it?
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. And truth speaker. I love that about you. I love that. And we always have so much to talk about. So, but I do want to make sure we get that golden question in there that I ask everybody. What would be your advice to humanity? I mean, you kind of just said it when you said dive into yourself, but what would you say, like, specifically?
I would say that for humanity as a whole, I want to see the world change. And the only way to create, I touched on it a little bit earlier, but I'll say it very directly. Personal development and personal growth is what will create those little ripple effects. And if we can get enough people to stand up and create those ripple effects, then we can see giant waves. And through giant waves is when we'll see change in the world. This is something that has to happen, or the demise of this planet is going to happen, with chemicals, with processes, with laws, with the way that we're pitted against each other and fighting one another instead of collaborating. Collaboration beats competition every day, but we are taught to be in this fighting stance with one another, and that's not going to create change in the world. It's just going to create more division and scornfulness and spite and resentment, and those are the negative emotions that aren't going to change anything. Really what they do is they keep you in a state of fight or flight, and now you can't even see straight. And this is why I encourage people to study, learn about your body, learn about your brain, learn about how these different functionalities create you, because your emotions change every 90 seconds. Literally, an emotion changes. It's a chemical response in your body that lasts for 90 seconds, and then the moment it's gone, unless you continue to think about it. And if you keep thinking about it, you perpetuate it, and it can create all sorts of havoc in your body. So study yourself, learn yourself, not just your mind, but your body as well. And through having this awareness, you will create large ripple effects, depending on the level of depth you're willing to go through. I create huge waves just by walking around because of the level of study I've done. If you want to be that person, then you got to set the example. You have to do the hard work. There's no other way around it. And if you set that example, your friends and family will watch. They may not do it right away, but they will watch. And I'm a testament to this. I have some of my best friends who now are like, wow, I've seen how much you've grown and changed and how much your life is better. Not just my life, but my relationships with my children, with my wife, with myself. The way I bring myself to the world, everything changed because I decided to learn about myself and then realize that I am awesome. We all are. We all are awesome in our own unique way. It's finding what makes you awesome and bringing that to the world. Because I don't believe when people say, oh, I'm nothing special. That's bullshit. We're all special, we're all unique, but it's about finding what makes you unique. It's about finding what creates that change. And I would argue to say that whatever your weakness is actually your strength. But they tell you that it's a weakness so you feel bad about yourself. You know, I was always called sensitive and squirrel, you know, and yes, those can be bad, but they're only bad if you make them bad. And I don't believe they're bad. I believe I'm sensitive to teach men their emotions, and I have this fast mindset because I need to reel it in. And if I can do those two things, I create large impact for a lot of people. Not everyone, but a lot of people. And so it's finding out what we're not good at and making it something that we're good at so that we can then bring that to the world. And you can't do that if you don't learn about yourself. So study yourself.
I love it. I love it. That's like the best ever. Best advice.
Thank you.
I do want to, before we wrap it up, I do want to say that I really appreciate the way that you bring that divine masculine energy in a heart-centered way. And not only do you make women comfortable to be around you and to be ourselves and to speak freely, but you know, you're also being a really good example for other men. And that's so freaking awesome.
Thank you.
You know, like what brought you there? How did you realize this?
To be a leader for men?
I mean, to come from the heart instead of the patriarchal way of linear logic, only mind thinking. You know what I mean? Like most men have their emotions shut off, you know? How did you know? How did you know this was the right way? Or what directed you this way instead of being more of that? Well, you know what I'm talking about. You've seen these men that are just, they're shut off from their wives and their friends and family. They hold it all in. They don't cry. You know what I mean? Like,
well, so I was very emotional as a child, and everyone made sure to tell me that. The school, my parents' friends, my friends. I would cry more than I should. I would express myself more than I should, and so it kind of pushed me into this box. And as a young man, having a daughter, you know, I couldn't be in a box and not have emotions. And then also being with my wife, but I didn't know how to manage them. Nobody taught me, and so trying to manage my emotions was very, very difficult. And so I resorted to what I was taught, which was substances. You know, I smoked a lot of weed. I'm not really much of a drinker, but I did smoke a lot. And it became to the point where if I didn't smoke, I was so aggressive that I'd scare my family. And so I would choose to smoke in fear of not wanting to create those emotions. But that wasn't a solution either. It was a short-term solution, but it wasn't a long-term solution. And I actually had one of my best friends suggest to me this book. And it was called Zen and the Art of Happiness. And he was like, you're always mad. You're always in this pity party. Like, you should read this book and it'll make a difference in your life. And, you know, I was doing what my family taught me. My mom lives in a fear state. My dad lives in a fear state. Like, that's just my grandma. And I don't know enough about my grandpa to say that, but their mindset is more on like, be cautious, you know, be cautious. And I think that's valuable, but I think that if you're so cautious that you don't forget to live, then what's the point? And so when that was me, you know, I was too cautious, I was too nervous, I was too scared and focusing on all the negative. And so how could I create anything from that place? So reading this book, the premise of the book is that everything that happens to you is for your greatest benefit. And that was a very interesting concept for me to follow. But it involved science. It involved all sorts of things that brought a full picture together. And what made it all solidify was after I read the book, I totaled my car. Like literally right after I read the book. Drove my car into a pole. It was kind of a freak accident, but whatever, you know. And I got out of the car, I started freaking out like I normally would. And I just took a deep breath and I said, everything that happens to you is for your greatest benefit. And I tried to relax myself and I was like, We'll get there. I ended up upgrading my car to a better car. Paid it in cash.
And you got out of the car.
Yes, that too. That's a big.
I just got goosebumps all over my body.
So then that opened my eyes, and I realized that. And for me, since I've studied the mind, I've learned that subconsciously your subconscious is always rotating. It's never stopped, and with learning new information, for me it still rotates in the back of my mind, and it's applied in real time, but not in consciousness mode, if that makes sense. It's the subconscious applying it and plastering it in. So I would have these like revelations of life, of experiences of like poor experiences that I design or designate as negative, but then I was trying to find the positive, saying everything is a benefit. So what is the positive in the situation? And I remember, I won't go deep into it because it's a long story, but my wife went to a concert without me because I had a medical issue and I couldn't go. And at first it made me very upset because I missed what she got to go on. And then it was like 6 months later, we had another experience that kind of caught me off guard because of this one. And again, it was like, why is this happening? And as time progressed, I learned that my wife going to that show by herself gave her a chance to step out of her own comfort zone by herself and not need me to be there, not need anyone to be there, and just realize that she is powerful in and of herself. And this influenced our relationship and herself for the rest of her life, and that was worth it. Me not going on to that show for her to step more into who she was destined to be.
Into her power.
Exactly, was worth it. And so that, so I just started applying this logic that everything that happens to me is for my greatest benefit. And it began to open up my emotions and help me open up myself and realize there was a purpose to this. And, I can't count because it's happened so many times that I've sat on the edge of my bed crying, why am I this way? Why is this happening to me? What is wrong with me? And it was through understanding myself and studying myself and applying that knowledge that everything is for my benefit that I'm able to walk away and say, I had this troubled childhood so I can help someone else overcome their childhood. And this isn't to say that my childhood is more troubled than anyone. We all have a troubled childhood. It is going to happen. Things happen. It's not to say that my parents were bad. I love my parents. They did the best they could with what they were given, and I have no resentment towards them. But shit happened. It's gonna happen. And so trying to turn a blind eye because you want to protect someone else only hurts yourself. You got to be honest with yourself. And so being honest with, this happened to me. For example, I was put on Adderall in first grade because I talked too much. And I had a lot of resentment for that because I felt like it, and I fully believe it impacted my brain in negative ways. And it caused me to have more, I have memory issues from my childhood and anger issues because of how it taught me, eating issues, just all sorts of different problems that was caused from this that I was I blame the doctors, I blame my mom, I blame the teachers. It was just so much resentment. And through recognizing no, I went through that because now I can help someone else that's gone through that and let them know they're not alone. This is some of what you're going through.
And then you can overcome it because you have.
Exactly. And, people don't care about how awesome you are. They want to know about the shit that you've been through and how you overcame it so they can learn too, because we all want to overcome it. Yeah. Hearing that guy that's successful, it doesn't matter when you don't see the mountain of failures that he's lived upon. And so it's through being vulnerable. And that was actually one of the big things, now that I'm thinking about it, that made an impact. I had a traumatic experience that involved sexuality, and I shared that when I was going through my coaching program. They're like, start doing lives, and I was nervous to do a live, and so I decided to do a live on the most daunting subject I could think about, and I had over 1.2 thousand views on that video, and I had never reached that level of exposure before. So it was just wow, people do care about the vulnerability. They respect that. And so it's well, then why would I want to hide my shit? People want to hear about it, but they don't want to hear about it in this woe is me complaining I'm going through this. They want to hear about, oh, I had this problem. This is how I overcame it. Then they're like, oh, that's great. You just overcame that. Whether it applies to them or not, it's something that you can cheer upon. It's admirable. You've struggled. You overcame. Good for you.
And there's a lesson in it. So even if it doesn't apply to their life, then they know, okay, well, that worked for that person. And if they ever come across someone who might have that problem, they can be like, hey, this guy did this for that.
Exactly. And that's why I speak up. That's why I do what I do, because it is through collaborating all these experiences that provides that level of awareness for others. And, you seeing someone else grow or me being able to teach you something that now impacts you, you can go teach that because you see so many people every day. You know, people come in and out, and so you get to gradually make that ripple effect every time you talk to somebody. And so what I've decided about myself is that I'm the gatherer of information as well as the disperser of information. And so as I learn, I put pennies in my piggy bank, and then I put pennies in my piggy bank, and I'm here to kind of share that wealth with the world, and share it with people in a way that they can share it too. It doesn't mean as much if I'm the guy. I don't want to be the guy. I want to be the guy that equips other people to be their own person. And so learning how to teach you in a sense that you can then teach others is what will create that larger impact, not me being the teacher, because that's not a solution. That's not scalable.
Yeah. Yeah, a true healer gives you the things, like you teach someone how to fish, and they eat or you fish for them, they eat for a day, I don't even remember. But you teach them how to fish, then they know how to eat for life, you know?
You give a man a fish, he eats for a day. You teach a man how to fish, he eats for his lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah, it's teaching people how to do the things. And so that's one of the big things that I feel like at the Quantum Realm Institute, I'm like, we're teaching people how to do the things on their own. We don't want people to become dependent on us, because there's so much of that goes on in the world between, and I don't mean to bad talk certain professions, but like, you know, the psychiatric, you know, it's like, let's just keep them on this pill,
right?
You know, and we're only going to spend 15 minutes with them instead of actually trying to think of what we can do to change the situation. We're just going to, you know, like keep them coming back for more, or even just like therapy. Like let's just keep talking about your problems so you keep coming back and paying my bills. You know, it's like we want to empower the individual. We want that person to be their own guru so that they can be sovereign and free and in control of their own life. You know, it's so important. It's
interesting you bring that up, because there's a quote that talks about the difference between coaching and therapy, and just how, you know, therapy, you can go to therapy for 4 or 5 years and you can have a recollection of awareness that you learned about what traumatized you, but you don't always have solutions about how to come out of that trauma. It's just the awareness that it happened, which isn't bad. I think that's valuable. Yeah, exactly, because now you're focusing on the lack instead of the lesson. And that's the struggle, is you need to focus on the lesson of the situation and how you can apply it to your life. Now, I haven't been through a bunch of therapy, so I can't speak on like an educated stance. But from what I was reading in this book is that the difference between coaching and therapy is that therapy is talking about the past. It's about your wounds. But the coaching is about the future and about creating this new life that you want to have. And do you need to go through the wounds to create that? Yes. Do you need awareness of the wounds to create that? Yes. But if you put so much focus on the past, you're not really creating focus on the future.
Creating the past.
Exactly. And that's where pills come in, because, you know, it's a conventional instead of a holistic. And I'm not here to say conventional is bad. I think they all have their place, but we're trying to chemically alter ourselves instead of find the root cause. And we're trying to throw a blanket over things instead of find out what's starting it. And once you find out what starts it, that's when you can create change. And when you just throw issues, and that's so going through therapy helps you find what starts it to an extent. Again, I don't know enough about it to speak on it in that depth, but I don't know if it's about creating sovereignty. It's not about equipping the person to be a better person for themselves. And that's what I want to do. You know, I want to equip people to be leaders. You know, I want to find leaders that want to be better leaders and equip them on how to be better leaders, because it's leaders that are the shepherds, right? And this isn't in any negative stance, but there's shepherds and there's sheep. There's leaders and there's followers. It's just the nature of society. And so if there's more shepherds that stand up, that learn this type of information, that set the example and lead, then there's ways that these flocks will follow more. But there's been the wrong type of leaders for so long that the flock is misguided. And this is what I tried telling my friend, is like, you can't be mad at people for being misguided. It's not their fault, you know, and it's not anyone's fault that they are where they are, but it is their fault if they choose to stay the same when given new information. And some people struggle with that, the implementation of new information. But if more leaders were to do that, if more leaders were to set that example and show the growth and change, then the followers will follow because they want to have that too. And so it's equipping people is the goal, not being the people, but equipping them.
Well, and I think so much of our system, whether it was government institutions, educational institutions, religious institutions, they all really worked on disempowering the individual in so many ways. So like government, rely on us. Healthcare system, rely on us. Education, rely on us. Religious, rely on us. Rely on something outside of yourself, a higher being, it's always outside of the individual. And so we have like a systemic, disempowered mass population. And so they don't think they can get off the couch. They don't think they can do these things. And I think that it's going to take the shepherds, it's going to take the leaders, it's going to take the truth seekers and the system busters and the people willing to speak up to, kind of let these people know, like, hey, the power is in you. All these others got you programmed to think that it's not, but it is in you. And the reality that you're living right now is the reality you're creating. And you can change that right now.
Exactly. And that's the cool thing about knowing about the brain is because it can literally change like that. And so people who think they are who they are and that nothing will change that, it's because they believe that to be true. And if you believe something, then it is. But if you learn that your brain actually can change and adapt and that it's never designed to stay the same, well, now scientifically you have opened the doorway to change. Now it's whether or not you're willing to step through it. And that is everyone's own decision. It's not mine, it's not yours, it's theirs. But I would call to ask them to do that. It's a challenge call. Like, step up, do something for yourself, and set that example for your family. Be the black sheep, and you'll be thankful you did. I promise.
Yeah, and build each other up too. Remind each other, like, hey, remind each other. I love that. And I think sometimes people don't always like that approach. But, I'm only going to tell you this because I care about you and I want more for you, or I want the best for you, and I know you're capable of more, and people don't always want to hear that.
No. And it's also delivery, though. Some people want to tell people what to do because they think it's what's best for them. And in a sense, that's kind of narcissism. It's you thinking it's better for someone else than they know what's best for them.
Yeah.
And that doesn't work either.
Well, it's counterproductive because what you're trying to do is get them to be empowered from within.
Yeah.
And now you're standing outside of them, telling them, just kind of reinforces that disempowering conditioning programming that they've had their whole entire life.
And it's so funny because that's what I always do. That's what I did to my wife. I was like, I want you to be happy. I want you to do something more. Like, do more, but do this, and do this. This is what you need to do. And it was like, my intentions were to help, but it was me thinking I knew how to help. And this is what was the help. And it was when I realized that I was doing that and I was actually ruining my marriage, I took a step back. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to let you do what you think is best for you. And I used the illustration of like she was in a box and I stuffed her more in that box. And so what I did by stepping back was open the lid. And then now she kind of was able to peek out and see who she was.
So beautiful.
Yeah, who she really was. And now she was able to step into herself. And did she fall when she got out of the box? Yeah, because no one else gave her a chance to fall out. Just like I fell when I got out. We all do. And we got to stumble. We got to go through a little bit of pain. Eyes wide open. Because it's like, wow, all these things that I thought was true is not. And it's a shock. It really is. And there's no getting away from that. But that's the start. That's the rebirth. That's the new stage of development for yourself. And you'll never know who you really are if you don't do that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'll stay in the confinements of your childhood and the demographic of whoever you grew up around. They're going to dictate who you are. And that was forced. We did not get to choose where we're born or what school we went to or who our friends were. Our parents choose that for us.
Or did our soul? That's a whole
that's a whole different other topic. But in order to step into yourself, you got to first rid yourself of that childhood view and recognize that you get to create yourself, not fall victim to who created you. And that's a whole different depth of a topic there.
We can talk about it too, I'm sure. Oh, thank you so much, Dustin, for being here.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure
Yeah.
to talk and see you. Thank you guys so much for joining in and tuning in and being with us. And, you know, if you ever have any questions or you're interested in any of Dustin's programs that he has to offer, please feel free to reach out to us and we'll get you connected with Dustin as soon as possible. So thank you so much and we'll see you soon. Namaste.
Bye.